Good morning, friends. Today we are going to learn Neoclassical Criticism, Module 3rd, Part 1st of Introduction to Literary Criticism. See, in the first part, we learn about function of criticism and definition of criticism, what are the approaches of criticism, and in the second module, we learn about classical criticism, Aristotle's poetics, tragic hero, and what is the concept of tragedy in Aristotle's poetics. How Aristotle defined tragedy and his tragic hero, his hamartia, his mistakes, and how tragic hero is responsible for his own mistakes and his tragic flaw. In the next part, now we are going to learn neoclassical criticism. It is said that neoclassical criticism is opposite to classical criticism. Sometimes it is called as they are followers of classical criticism. That's why they are called as a neoclassical criticism. See, introduction. Like literature, criticism has a long tradition that may refer back to Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. You have studied Aristotle's theory of poetry in the earliest unit. Aristotle focused on tragedy in his poetics and laid emphasis on the concept like mimesis, catharsis, hamartia. When we learn about Aristotle's catharsis or hamartia or mimesis theory of imitation, we learn how it is a classical and how it is still applied to the contemporary literature as well. So that's why it is called. Criticism has a long tradition. It refers back to Socrates, Aristotle, and Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. As we learn in the second part, Aristotle's poetics concept of tragedy. The English neoclassical movement was derived from both classical and contemporary French models. Boileau's lay art, poetic, and Pope's essay on criticism both provide us critical statements of neoclassical principles. These books are more important in neoclassical criticism and present because those contemporary models followed by the English neoclassical critics. The movement embodied a group of attitudes towards art and human existence, ideas of order, logic, accuracy, correctness, restraint, decorum, and so on. They concentrate on art, ideas of order, logic in literature, accuracy, correctness must be written in neoclassical literature, must be followed by neoclassical literature. It encouraged the artist to imitate or reproduce the structures and themes of Greek or Roman originals. Neoclassical writers encouraged to imitate and reproduce and followed the structure and themes of Greek or Roman originals. Neoclassicism dominated English literature from the Restoration in 1660 until the end of the 18th century. So, neoclassical literature or criticism has a long period of particular era or particular structure, and neoclassical literature is having a big period, so it is named in different manner. Various names has been given to the neoclassical literature. To a certain extent, neoclassicism represented a reaction against the Renaissance view of man as being fundamentally good and possessed of an infinite potential for spiritual and intellectual growth. To some extent, it is a reaction to Renaissance view of man, good and possessed of infinite potential for spiritual and intellectual growth. Neoclassical theorists, by contrast, saw the man as an imperfect being, inherently sinful, whose potential was limited. The Renaissance emphasized imagination, invention, experimentation, and mysticism. On the other hand, neoclassical theorists want to suggest the truth and a representation of life. They never believe in imagination. The neoclassical theorist, however, emphasized order and reason, restraint, common sense, and religious, political, economic, and philosophical conservatism. They maintained that man himself was the most appropriate subject of art. They saw art itself as essential and essential, pragmatic, valuable because it was somehow useful, and as something which was properly intellectual rather than emotional. See, neoclassical critics emphasized on intellectual rather than emotional. On the other hand, in Renaissance, there is a importance to the emotions and feelings. Hence, they gave importance to proper subject matter. They made an attempt to subordinate details to an overall design, and they employed in their work concepts like symmetry, proportion, unity, harmony, and grace. The neoclassical period in England spans the 140 years or so after the restoration of Charles II in 1660. The neoclassical criticism is divided into two phases. The first phase covers the Restoration age from 1660 to 1700, where neoclassicism was liberal and moderate. John Dryden was the leading figure of this age. The second phase covers the first 6 or 7 decades of the 18th century, where neoclassical criticism becomes more and more narrow, slavish, and stringent. Pope, Addison, and Dr. Johnson were the prominent critics of this phase. Matthew Arnold called the neoclassical age as our excellent and indispensable 18th century. See how the neoclassical criticism or period divided into two parts, that is, first is more liberal and moderate, and another become more narrow, slavish, and stringent. Yet this school of criticism is known to us by various names. Firstly, it is called the Restoration Age because King Charles II was restored to the throne of England. Secondly, it is called the Augustine's Age because the writers of the period believed that their age was the golden age of English literature, like the age of Emperor Augustus, whose period was the golden age of Latin literature. That's why in English literature, neoclassical age is called as Augustan age. Thirdly, it is also called the classical age as the epithet classical refers to creative writers of outstanding works of the highest merit. The writers of this period believed that the works of the writers of classical antiquity, Latin writers, presented the best models and ultimate standards of literary taste. The principle of classicism is best expressed by Pope in his poetry, but the neoclassical critics misunderstood and wrongly interpreted the so called rules. So, how Alexander Pope represented the neoclassical age and how he followed the models from the classical literary units or literary test. Lastly, this period is named as the pseudo-classical or neoclassical age because classicism of this period is different from the classicism of ancient Greece and Rome. The works of this period lack inspiration or emotion that differentiates true classics. See, in this period, they followed the classical literature, but to some extent lacks the inspiration or emotions from the classical literature or classical criticism. So here we learn about the class neoclassicism, how it is differentiates from the classical literature or classical criticism, or to some extent how they followed classical criticism as well. So here we end about the introduction of neoclassical criticism. In the next part, we will learn about Samuel Johnson's preface to Shakespeare, how he presented, how he wrote his views on Shakespeare and his writing and his characteristics of his writing. Till then, thank you.